Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning and a warm welcome once again on Galaxy Universal Network, Channel 500 on Started, and this is Pan-African Morning.
Hi, Sudi Melang. This is still Pan-African Morning News right here on Galaxy Universal Network. And of course, we are fearless, zero favor and zero fiction.
Warm welcome to Galaxy Universal Network, Channel 500 on Started.
Catch the Pan-African Morning Queens, Sasanda Kwabikuto and Balisa Muchiminyani.
Thank you so much, Mr. LEKOTA, for joining us.
Yes.
And it is really a great pleasure and an honor to have you here on our green couch.
Yes.
Now, maybe to start from the beginning, a lot of people, of course, they knew you back from the times when you were with the African National Congress, and then, of course, because you've always been vocal and always, sat in there and spoke your mind, and until when you packed your bags and say, bye ANC, I'm going to cope on my own and find ways how do I cope without you. And how is that going so far?
No, we are doing very well indeed. But because today is George's funeral.
Yes.
And these restrictions of coronavirus make it very difficult for all of us to attend a funeral of such an outstanding stalwart,
of course,
and leader of the people of our country. I must take an opportunity to extend my deepest sympathies to George's family, to our friends, comrades, because even though we have all these different names and all of that, the struggle we have been waging is one struggle.
Yes, of course.
We are all in a common struggle. Our aims and objectives are all enshrined in the Freedom Charter. And it was really very sad to hear that George has had his last breath. I lack words to say what George has meant to generations of South African opponents of apartheid and oppression, both before us, in our time, right up to the end of his life. He lived and breathed the struggle. Frankly, the first time I heard about George, I would have been just a youngster. It was shortly after the Rivonia trial. His name featured here and featured there. And then when I got to Robben Island, ultimately, after my first trial, and I joined with the leaders such as Walter Sisulu, Govan Mbeki, Nelson Mandela, and the others, I really learned from them about who George BIZOS was, who Arthur Shaskalson was, who so many of the legal brains that were part of our struggle were. And little did I know then that after my release, after that first trial, I would actually end up one of his defendants in this DELMAS trial that you have just been listening to Comrade Popo Molefe narrating our experience. And I thought I had understood who he was and what he was about from the stories that I was told about. Little did I realize how much the struggle was part of his life. And it was only in the DELMAS trial that I got to meet the man, to experience the individual. And so I want to say to the family of George, to his friends, to the community of South Africans who have lived to know him, we are really sad at the loss of such an outstanding South African. And I hope that younger generations that will follow will learn from the records of history, from the stories that others are telling, how to be a fighter for freedom and how to defend people. And because he absorbed the struggle, and he did everything he did was the things that you as a defendant would have done exactly that, or he did even better than you because of his dedication.
Yes.
So I got to know him in the DELMAS trial. We got to know him very well, and because it was such a long trial, as Comrade Popo has so correctly said, the longest trial in daytime, because there's no trial that ran every day, every week, as the DELMAS trial in all of the history of struggle. And so not only did I get to know him, but I got to know also where he came from, who he was, and what his family was, and how he saw himself in that situation.
Yeah. How much of the truth that George Bezos did not even want money when he was defending you during the DELMAS trial?
As you can imagine, we came from poor families, really, and we would not have been able, if we needed to pay, we had to pay Arthur Shaskalson, we had to pay him, we had to pay the other junior advocates, the attorneys, and so on. Where would we have gotten such amounts of money? We would not have been able to do this. But so he was not concerned about that. He concentrated on the work. His duty was to defend the defenseless. People who had no rights, we had no rights, and we were struggling for our rights. And so we could not afford this. So a lot of organizations, international organizations and whatnot, that he had to link up with and assist, get them to assist. And if they did, that's fine. If they didn't, he carried on as if nothing has happened.
Wow, such a remarkable man, I must say.
Unbelievable. He was
definitely.
unbelievable.
So, you know, fortunately enough for me, I was born after this whole apartheid has at least started to die down.
Yes.
How it is like, if you can take us to your journey, how it is like to sit there and be in a trial, awaiting, knowing exactly that the offense that I've committed is, of course, punishable by death. And you sitting in there and realizing that this could be the death of me.
Yes.
Take us that journey, please.
Well, my sister, I must tell you that we were charged with high treason, which carried death. We were charged, alternatively, we were charged with terrorism, which, if we were found guilty, death penalty. And then we were charged with 6 counts of murder. Because in the riots in the townships, especially Sharpeville, the Vaal, Sebokeng and those areas, Everton, at least 5 councillors were killed by our people who were very angry with the rentals and the conditions in which they were living in. 5 of them died in the rioting that happened, and then 1 security person for one of the councillors. So each one of those murders, each one of them, if it could be proved against anybody, then we were gone. And I must tell you that I had already served time for terrorism, although I had been sentenced only to 10 years. Now, this time, it seemed impossible to escape. But even with my co-accused, who faced also the same charges that we were facing. So we thought that we would not see the other side of the trial. And so we discussed the matter among ourselves, and we said, comrades, it's going to be very important that when we defend ourselves, we must do it in such a way that the majority of us, there was 22 of us in this trial, that the majority of us must survive. They must be found not guilty.
It's a very painful journey to see that this is what it took to gain the freedom.
I just want to make one little point that I think it's very important for me to say to you.
Yes.
So then we thought that what we must do, we must be ready to take onto ourselves the worst aspects of the evidence, but where there's a chance for any one of us to be released, we must make sure that that one is released and so on, which meant that we would not implicate each other in anything that might have led to sentencing, because it was just death penalty all round. And we conveyed this to our lawyers to say, look, if there are some of us who don't have a chance of survival, it would be better if the worst evidence come against us rather than against all of us, so that the movement, the United Democratic Front, must continue by the return of those of us who would go out. And it was a miraculous thing that George understood that. One of the things that we had learned is that when he was defending the Rivonia trialist, there was an advocate called Biranji who used to specialize in cross-examination of the witnesses. And then there was Bram Fisher, Advocate Bram Fisher, who was a Queen's Counsel. He specialized in arguing the case of the comrades of Rivonia trial. And comrade told us how that this combination of these comrades was actually responsible for the court sentencing them to life rather than to death. So now we had inherited Arthur Chaskalson and BIZOS, who were practicing exactly the similar style of work. So George BIZOS specialized in interrogation of the witnesses, or the cross-examination of the witnesses, and Arthur Chaskalson studied the cases and then argued the case with. So what do you think happens? The outcome of DELMAS was that, let me just round off this point. The outcome was that 22 of us, out of that 22, 11 were found not guilty to start with. Now we went into defense with 11. Out of that 11, 5 were found not guilty and released, and some were sentenced to suspended sentences. 5 of us, 5 of us were sentenced, found guilty and sentenced. Tom Mantata, I think, to 6 years. Gina Malindi to 5 years, or Malindi 5 years, Mantata 6 years. Comrade Popo and Comrade Mos Chigani, 10 years. and I got 12 years.
Oh, you're the worst culprit.
We were released. I mean, really, it was as good as. I remember saying from the dock after I got 12 years, I said, well, that's a fortnight. Because
rather than death penalty or life.
We just could not believe what had happened. And when the case went on appeal, a year later, we were all released.
Wow.
We won it.
Oh, wow. Oh, wow.
So that was the work that
BIZOS
and other Shaskals did. And the other attorneys and advocates, junior advocates that were there. So we lived through a miracle. Now and then, even now, we still think, man, we didn't think we would make it through.
No, for sure.
Yes.
For sure. No, it's quite a very interesting one. And just to get to listen, I mean, as I said earlier on, that it's quite intriguing to sit here and listen, because sometimes when we are just being told the history of our country, this is type of information that is not in our history books, of course.
Right. Yes,
our history is teaching us something else other than the reality behind it, you know. I think most of the facts about BIZOS, they only come now after he has passed away, because the opportunity was not even offered to the people like yourself to come and tell your story and tell the heroes that actually saved, you know, our own heroes that were fighting for our freedom. And we want to thank you, and also thank you know, him for his services, because as you said earlier on, that should they have not given their sleepless nights and everything to save you guys from that, it could have been a different story. Wouldn't have never even had about yourselves, because the apartheid regime would have you know, terminated your lives at a very, very young age. Now, when we look into this, of course, you were previously a member of the Black Consciousness, and then you left there and came to the African National Congress, and then from there you went into COPE. Maybe let's start on the Black Consciousness as to why is it did you end up deciding to leave that movement and move to another one?
Well, you must remember that the struggle of the people of South Africa is only one struggle that we were waging. So when we came into ourselves, the ANC had been banned, the Pan-Africanist Congress had been banned, all the liberation organizations had been banned. And so in 66, 68, a movement started among the university students.
Yes.
Led by the late Steve Biko.
Yes.
Bani Pichana and others. It led to the formation in 1968 of the South African Students Organization, SASO.
Yes.
It was formed in St. Francis College, Marion Hill, in 1968, December 68. And I was doing matric there at that time. And at the end of the meeting, we were invited there, and then, of course, we founded SASO. And by the time we went to university, the South African Students Organization was the blacks only students organization. And one of the main reasons why that had to happen was because although, you know, we could become members of the National Union of South African Students, NUSAS, which was a non-racial organization.
Yes.
But, you know, when NUSAS held meetings, conferences, the police would be everywhere to make sure that apartheid laws are enforced. So that if the students went, for instance, to Wits for a conference, then the black students would not be allowed to sleep in the university residences. So they'd have to go maybe to find a school in Alexander Township and a school and bring mattresses and sleep there. During the day they come to the conference, then they go and sleep there. But then you see, And then of course the police would arrest some of them for petty things. If you were eating, you could not use the same utensils. Yes, because apartheid had a law called the Reservation of Separate Amenities Act. You couldn't, like now in this here, you couldn't, if you drank out of this cups, no white students would drink out of them. So you couldn't eat out of the same plates and all of that kind of thing. This was quite humiliating.
Yes.
The fact that you couldn't even sleep in the same, residence where the conference is held.
Was already.
There was a law called 72-hour clause. If you came to Johannesburg or Durban for a conference, and you came, let us say, from the Free State or from any other place, if you're an African, you could stay in that town for 72 hours, and then you must get out of town, and then come back to start a new 72 hours. It was ridiculous.
Very ridiculous.
And so Steve and the other leaders of the students said, no, we must separate. We must form a different organization in order to fight this thing.
Yes.
So that, we can't have a normal organization in an abnormal society.
No, for sure.
We have to get rid of this thing. That's how SASO was formed. Some of the people thought that SASO was just carrying forward apartheid. We were, conforming to apartheid, but that was not the position. So the formation of the South African Students' Organization really raised the tempo of the struggle.
Yes.
And in the black communities, people started forming other formations like the Black People's Convention.
Yes.
And we moved in this way. But from time to time, we continue to say that we want a non-racial South Africa. In the policy manifesto of the South African Students' Organization, in which we wrote that in 71, we wrote that SASO believes that South Africa is a country in which both black and white live and shall continue to live together. So although we were this black consciousness, we said that it's important for blacks to love themselves, to respect themselves, so that as to teach
the whites
that we are not less than any other human being.
We can all live together.
We are proud human beings, and we deserve to be treated like anybody else, and we are going to struggle for that. So I remember that we made all kinds of slogans that we wrote. For instance, I used to have a emblem that says, "I'm black and I'm beautiful." And then some of the people wrote things like, "I'm black and I'm comely." And we used to tell our girls, our sisters, and all of that, to say, "Look, why do you stretch your hair and you make it you want to be white and so on, and all these creams, this skin lightening cream? Why do you do that? You are black, and your blackness is beautiful." So that's the kind of thing we did. So I was looking there the other day now when they was having this
clicks, yes,
the clicks story, and I thought, we were advocating in our day that no, we want to be black because black is beautiful. You know, that was the movement. Now, I'm telling you that because what I'm trying to say is, just as our forebears had said at Cape Town in 1955, South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white.
Yes.
We were now saying it in a different way, but we are saying the same thing. So since these organizations had been banned, now we formed this black consciousness, but the message remained the same.
Yes.
And in fact, I didn't know at the time about this Freedom Charter because it was banned. Now all this literature was banned. But when I got to Robben Island, I discovered that but the ANC is saying exactly what we are saying. So now what's the point?
I might as well, if you can beat them, join them.
You must join the African National Congress. So then this South Africa belongs to all who live in it, black and white, really appealed to me. And I reminded my comrades about the SASO policy manifesto, which said SASO believes that South Africa is a country in which both black and white live and shall continue to live together.
Oh, wow.
So then it was the same policy. And then as I linked up the things and so on, I realized that, in fact, those who formed SASO had actually come from the youth league of the ANC at the time before it was banned. And now they were still driving also this policy that no, black and white is all human beings. We must just live as one people and so on. And the reason why we adopted we didn't abandon the policies of the ANC. We objected to the corruption. We objected.
We are going to get into that because I really want us to talk about that because I've been talking to the younger generation as to why they left the ANC. So now having somebody who was in the Robben Island who actually realized. So this conversation is very important. I'm going to take a very short break. When we're coming back, we are still with MUSIOUA LEKOTA right here on the green couch, discussing, as we said, that now we are going to go deeper into politics. Let's find out why did you vamos kahle kahle. Stay with us.